Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everyone at the center in Illinois, and that matter, all of you for being here and your work with children that I imagine brings you here. It it's probably not the word feedback that brings you here. Maybe it is, but that's not a word that we commonly associate with early childhood. It tends to be something that we think of as being part of job reviews, and it may not have such a great connotation. So unless you're a Head Start educator and using the class tool, it probably is not something we think about a lot, but it is something that we do more or less all the time in many interactions every day. So what I'd like to do with you today is to think about how we can actually do more and do it, provide feedback as intentionally and skillfully. When we do, it has an impact on children's learning, pretty strong one actually, and also makes a difference on children's attitude towards learning. Plus, I would just say, as an early childhood educator, I think it's kind of fun and exciting when we sort of have these kind of dynamic back and forth interactions with young kids where we can just see them learning and growing right in dialogue with us. So, what we will do today, in fact, maybe to outline it, you should have a couple handouts. One is a collection of all the PowerPoint slides from today, so you have that. But the other is a one-page sheet that is a overview of our work. And actually, if you have that next to you and or have it handy, and you can use that to sort of follow our progress, collect your thoughts, make notes. That's the one titled at the top, Feedback Session and Note-Taking Guide. And what I would outline for you there is we're going to do a couple things. One is we are going to make a connection. We're sort of going to start with this framework of a powerful interaction, which this is one of a series of sessions in. And so we'll use that framework. We're then going to sort of look at a few big ideas around feedback and see how we can be intentional about using those strategies in our interactions. So let's step in and begin. And as I mentioned, this is actually the sixth in a series of related webinars around this theme and structure of powerful interactions. If you weren't at the first one or the second or the fifth, that's not a problem. I will make this one make sense as a standalone on its own. But if you are someone who's been to some of the others, then hopefully you'll see how this fits into that structure that we've looked at in earlier conversations. Let's see, I'm seeing a note from Tammy about how to get the handouts. Karen, I wonder if you could reply to that. I know that you have provided those for folks, so maybe you can help her know how she would access those. So let's see. This is as I said, our sixth in a series with powerful interactions. I'm going to reference a couple tools along the way. One is this book, Powerful Interactions, second edition. And I've had the privilege of working with pretty closely with two of the authors for a number of years and have used this work quite a bit in my own and in other programs around the country. And so think it's a pretty useful tool for us to think intentionally about how we interact with kids. The other, and that actually happens to be the older version of the classroom assessment scoring system. For those of you who are in Head Start, that will look familiar, either this older edition as indicated in the illustration, or let's see, the newer edition right here. If those look familiar, then we're going to talk class a little bit as we go along. If those don't look familiar, then don't worry too much about it. you don't need to speak class in order to make sense of this session. We will use some of the concepts because they are, I think, useful to our discussion. But for people who are in Head Start, this is actually part of your performance review that we do this, right? So we'll make those connections for you as well. Let's see. I think I'd like to invite us before we step into our content to just take a moment to settle. You're coming out of, I don't know what today, probably a busy day with children or with other educators. And part of doing this work well with kids is being fully present with them. So let's take a moment just to do that here, partly so we can be present in this conversation and partly as practice. So let me just invite you to take a breath, whatever helps you calm and focus. And part of doing this work well, as we will see, is how we show up with kids. So we will attend to that as appropriate in this conversation. Oh, speaking of which, as I use the word conversation, here I am doing all the talking. Forgot to mention, please feel free to make comments in the chat or questions, and I will respond to them as I catch them and as appropriate. And I think sort of at least within some kind of bounds, if folks want to come off mute at moments for questions and comments, I think we can be freewheeling enough to do that as well. So please feel free to have this be at least somewhat of a dialogue. I know that's hard in this format, but where you can, I want to welcome that. Okay, so let's do a little bit of thinking about kids and interactions and feedback. And I think to start with that, I'd like to just ask you to think about, if you were with kids today, great. If not, an earlier day, and just think about some moment when a child encountered some kind of challenge that they couldn't resolve on their own. They got stuck or frustrated or walked away or couldn't answer it. And maybe that was getting their coat on, maybe that was figuring out a rhyme for dog. Mary, zipping jacket. There's a classic. Indeed. So let's see if we can just collect some of those places where young children get stuck or are unable to complete their work, having to come in from the playground. Ooh, yeah, sharing. I have difficulty sharing sometimes too, actually. But yes, younger kids have a harder time working through a math problem. Waiting in line for the bathroom. There are lots of things that are hard when you're young, aren't there? Yeah, managing an emotion or feeling. Staying quiet while someone else is talking. Pulling up pants and putting on shoes. Sitting. Having to come in from outside. Opening milk. We're going to have some things to say about opening milk. If that isn't the hardest motor skill anybody encounters before elementary, I don't know what is, right? Coming back from the gym to the classroom, all of these self-regulation problems too, right? Trouble in the bathroom, accepting the risk. We've got lots of these that are related to executive function, self-regulation kinds of things, don't we? Yeah. Which is not being picked to answer a question. Whew, all kinds of difficulties here. It's tough being 2 or 3 or 4, isn't it? There's lots that's kind of the definition of being 3, is that you're encountering this whole world that requires that at least provides the opportunity for you to engage in all kinds of cognitive and regulatory and motor skills that are actually pretty hard for you, that at some point soon, hopefully, will be second nature, but are quite challenging at this point. So what I would like to do is I want to encourage us to keep these in mind. Okay, I'm actually going to jot a couple here. Coming in from outside, yeah, math, managing emotions, sharing, zipping their jackets, yep, opening milk. And let's keep these in mind and others as they show up. And what we're going to think about some together is what kind of support can we offer children so that they can gain competency at these skills, build towards success um, with with us offering something other than just, I can do it for you, right? Because that is part of what happens sometimes when we've got 8 kids who need their coats zipped. Probably the speedy thing to do is for us to zip all their coats, right? And yet what we also need to do is to lean into that somehow in some ways so that next time those children, at least 1 or 2 of them, have a little more skill than they did before, and feedback's a process for that. So let's hang on to that. I want to offer this framework that we've been using in this Powerful Interaction series, and that is that when we think about stepping into an interaction with a child, whether it is a child who's having difficulty pulling up their pants, or a child who is having to come in from the playground or zipping their jacket, that there's sort of a process or a protocol we can use that helps position us and the child for an effective learning moment. All right. And we refer to those as a powerful interaction. And here's kind of the structure we've been using. All right. The first thing we do is, before we step into the interaction, even if at all possible, we take a moment to do a me check and be present. That is, we notice, how am I doing? Am I regulated and focused here? Okay? Am I, if I have 9 children wanting their coats zipped at once, that I'm noticing my own internal response with that, right? Because we can become dysregulated too, right? Or that I am focused on, getting us inside because it's lunchtime or whatever that is. But so we are slowing down enough to notice our own internal state so that we can self-regulate and be fully present in a way that will allow us to be effective with that child. The other part of that sort of being present is being present with that particular child. So when I am with a child who is having to come in from the outside, I'm sort of noticing that child. What do I know about this child? What's my history with this child? What are the cues they're giving me right now about their emotion state? And that will all help me make an effective intervention. Okay. Then the next step is to connect, is to make some kind of move that's a relationship move, so that the child feels like we are there to be helpful, that we are there as people who care about them and will support them. And especially in some of the kinds of situations that you've described here where self-regulation is in play, that connection move is really important to the child feeling like that they want to accept our partnership at this moment. Right? The other piece, of course, is that when we do that connect, then we're tuning into them as well, which makes us more effective. And that might be as simple as getting down to their level and smiling at them. It might be saying, "Can I help you?" It might be identifying with what they have going on. "Oh, looks like you're stuck." Okay. Some move that sends them a message that we notice them, we care about them, and we are there to partner with them in this moment. Okay. And then we make a move to extend learning. And, that with zipping their coat, it might be that we show them about how to fit the 2 teeth, fit the wait, my zipper terminology. I don't know. Fit that little slider piece in where it snugs in there, or maybe it's about us holding it while they pull up on the zipper pull. Okay, there's a number of ways that we can support kids in being successful with that. Maybe it's about explaining, oh, when you have your zipper, you can hold this part with this hand and this part. There's lots of things that we do to support kids in these kinds of moments, right? And but But no, let me make that as an and. And the move that we make there is more likely to be sensitive to that child if we've slowed down and been present and connected. And it is more likely to be well received by that child if we've done those things as well, right? So we're going to focus today on extend learning strategies. Feedback is a strategy for extending children's learning, but that kind of presupposes that we're entering interactions in ways that help us be present with that child and connect with them. All right. And so we'll sort of reference those as appropriate. As I'd suggested, feedback is kind of a strategy for extending learning. And those of you who've been along for the ride, we've looked at a number of different strategies for extending children's learning. The first three actually related to language support, and then some problem-solving ones around solving problems and curiosity. Linking new to the familiar actually has some connection with this feedback work we're doing right now. It's in effect a scaffolding strategy. But today we're going to focus specifically on feedback. So let's jump in and see like what do we mean by feedback and what do we mean by it in the early childhood world. So here's a really simple model of feedback. And this is a shape sorting box. And you may or may not, you probably have at least something like this. Even actually many toddler classrooms will have something like this. And in preschool classrooms, and it may not be this one, but something where children have some kind of shape and they sort it into, they slide it through a slot and it goes into the box, okay? Really simple kind of material. So what's going on with this? Here's what I want to offer you, is that if a child, let's say the child takes the cylinder, right, the one with the circular shape, right? And they've got it over the box and they see the hole with the circle and they take that cylinder and they slide it right in, right? Okay, that's great. When they do that, in effect, the box says, yes, you got it, right? The box allows that cylinder to slide through. Now, the box obviously doesn't say anything, but by the way that child is interacting with the box is kind of sending a message, oh, you made the right choice. You took the circular cylinder shape and you put it over the circle and you slid it in. The box, that's like positive feedback, all right? Now, let's say the child takes that cylinder and puts it over the triangle hole. Tries to put it in, it doesn't go in, right? The box in effect says, nope, okay? The simplest form of feedback is simply indicating to somebody whether their answer is correct or incorrect, okay? There's lots of other kinds of forms of feedback, right? But the simplest is simply is something that informs the person doing the thinking, doing the work, doing whatever, that they got it or they didn't get it, okay? Zipping the jacket gives feedback, nope, that's not how you do it, right? Or yes, that's how you do it, okay? Now, the problem is, yes, no feedback is not very effective in teaching kids new skills. So, the environment gives some feedback to kids, but it's not very skillful. And so what we can do as human beings who can provide more sophisticated feedback than that is we can offer other kinds of feedback that help children be successful. So yes, no feedback, great. But let's say you're this educator and you're watching this child try to put in this case, the child has the cube, and they're trying to put it into the cube, into the square hole, but it's not going in. Okay, and you and I know if you've got the right shape for the right hole, but it's still not going in, what must be the problem? Must not be lined up right. Okay, right? That's what you and I would do, would think, right? Oh, and then, okay, that's great. But all the box says is, no, that's not right. Okay, what could an adult do or say to help that child be successful? Because remember, he's trying to get it in there and the box is saying no. So you know what may well happen is he may take that cube and he may go try to put it in the circular hole or in the triangular hole or whatever. And that's not going to work either. Donna says, turn it another way. So we could just, while that child's trying to put it in, we could just say, well, try turning that a little bit. Yeah, turn it another way. What happens if you turn it another way? Yeah, if you wanted to use a fancy vocabulary word, you could say rotate, right? Well, try turning it a little bit. Well, maybe turn it a little. Oh, look at that. So Donna just gave a hint, all right? That's feedback, all right? That is, you noticed what the child was doing and you thought about what does it take for them to be successful when they're not being successful, and what can I do to assist them, not do it for them, okay, but to assist them so that they can figure it out and complete it. Turn it another way. There you go. So let's watch an educator in action with some feedback. And you're going to see a child encounter, it's cleanup time, all right? And you're going to see a child encounter a couple problems. One is he's got a credit card that he's supposed to like be putting away and doesn't seem to know where it goes. And the other is he's going to have some problems with a zipper. And, and it's actually a zipper that's looks like it's somewhat damaged, which of course zippers are hard enough as they are. And let's watch what she does that's effective in helping this child be able to get the information he needs.
Where does the credit card go? Where does your mom keep her credit card? In her pocket? Does she carry anything with her that she might put it in if she doesn't have any pockets?
5 steps and then,
What does she carry on her shoulder? Do we have any purses over here?
let's not use so much water.
That'd be a great place to put it over here.
1 minute, we're cleaning up the 1 minute puzzles.
That's what mom does? Excellent. Now we know where it is when we want to buy something later, right?
1 minute left. Yeah.
That is it? Want some help? Well, it looks like this is part of a zipper, isn't it? It looks like it, but it's missing the tag to pull it. See, this one has a little tag to pull it open and close. So how do we get that closed? You just have to pull on it carefully, right? Yeah, you use your fingernail. That was a good idea. It's really hard to pinch it with your fingers. So if you push it with your fingernail, you can get right up close to it. Nice job. Give me 5.
Yeah, but I think we have like 30 more seconds.
You know,
All right, what'd you notice there? Anyone want to put something in the chat or come off mute? What did this educator do that helped this child be successful in, first off, figuring where to put a credit card and then dealing with a zipper?
She said things like good using your fingernails, and like she recognized the things that he was doing, and so the child, that encourages the child.
Okay, so she described, she recognized what he was doing, and actually this is, let's hold this up and kind of highlight this. Part of children being successful with problems is sticking with it, of being persistent. And when she acknowledged his strategies and his efforts, I think the word you used, Simcha, was encouraged, I think, that she encouraged him. Okay, oh, we've got lots of things going on here. Provided hints, absolutely. Mary says prompting him and asking, several people asking questions. Yeah, the interaction was extended. This was not a one turn. This was several turns. Yeah, for those, yes. Yep, gave some hints, some vocabulary, described what she saw. Very encouraging, talking to him about what was going on. Yep, made a real life connection. So let's start with that credit card there. He's got the credit card, and it's hard to hear exactly, but I think he said his mom puts it in in her pocket, and she goes, in her pocket? Does she have something? And he didn't seem to be getting it, and so she gave a little, like a little visual of her shoulder, right? That's a hint. Who was it that one of you used the word hint, right? Kimberly did, I think. Yep, the positive facial expressions are encouragement. So she's giving him hints, she's giving him encouragement. When it came to the zipper, she did some explaining there, and then as people mentioned, encouraging there as well. Yeah, lots of comments on the encouragement here. Yep. Yes, made it experience relatable. Where does your mom put her credit card? That is a way we solve problems, right? Is to use our prior experience. Yeah. Um, Tim, I appreciate you mentioning calm. She's just like dead calm, which provides sort of that safe space and encouragement. Susan, the kind and gentle words, there is a social emotional component to this, right? So what I want to highlight here is I want to highlight that well, probably a few things, but one is that people have noticed her sort of prompting his thinking with all those questions, right? People have noticed her giving hints, all right? They've noticed her persistence, right? The interaction was extended. They've noticed her encouragement of his persistence. You've noticed the sort of social emotional state here. This is like a very simple, well, it's not a simple interaction actually, right? But it's just a cleanup time interaction. And yet we have this adult that is using all of these skills to help this child um, uh, stick with and solve a problem. Laura says she acknowledged his efforts as well without providing him with the solution or the answer to the initial question. And those two go so well together that like we can not solve problems for kids if we offer them the emotional and the cognitive or motor support to enable them to keep sticking with it. And that acknowledgement of effort is absolutely huge on that. So let's see if we can, oops, take a bit of a look at just sort of the essentials of feedback and then take it apart and use a lot of, I mean, you folks have really laid out here a lot of what we're looking at in effective feedback. But the essential superstructure of effective feedback is three parts. One is that it's a response, and that's like, well, duh, but sometimes people don't respond to children's distress or difficulty or comments, right? That because maybe we're busy with another child, maybe we don't know what to do. So the simple act of responding is the first step. I notice that this child is having difficulty. I note and I step in and respond. Okay. And then I do so in a way that has two impacts. One of those impacts is expanding learning. And I want to suggest expanding learning in a couple different senses. One, in the sense of this child is able to complete this task, okay? Got the credit card put away, all right? But the other, in the sense of this child is being mentored in strategies that will serve this learner at other opportunities, okay? So when we had the reference to the child's prior experience, that's a strategy for solving problems, right? So when she says, "Where does your mother put the credit card?" That she is the like meta back behind that is one way we solve problems is we think about applications in other settings, right? So he's being supported in strategies for problem solving, right? And then the other here then is encouraging effort. And you folks have named lots of ways that she's done that, but that piece is as essential as the expanding learning, especially, I mean, I'm sure you have some kids who you work with and they would persist all day, and you have others who, when they make a first move, if it doesn't work, they're done, unless we scaffold their effort as well as their learning, right? So that's kind of the big picture on feedback. And let me be, we're going to go into a lot more detail, but before we do, I want to highlight just what we know about why it matters, okay? And the research is actually really clear on this, that feedback has as much learning impact as just about anything that happens in a classroom, not only in early childhood classrooms, but this is something that's true up the grades. That if, I mean, that first quote there from a meta study that was done by John Hatterley and Timperley, effective feedback can almost double the average student growth over a school year. That's big time stuff. And in another study, wasn't quite as dramatic, but 50%, that's still pretty good, right? So what we see is that in classrooms where the adults consistently provide effective feedback, it only makes sense, right? Because think about what's happening when feedback happens. Feedback generally happens when a child is not getting something. You can do it when they are successful as well. I'm focusing on the times when they're not, because that's where there's the most impact. But if a child is not successful with something, and an adult persists with that child in supporting them in kind of graduated, fine-tuned steps that help them be successful, that's how learning happens, right? So the other piece of this that I think is really worth remembering, and as we think about how we deploy feedback, is that feedback matters most for the children that are having the most difficulties. If I know all the answers, you ask me, so you're doing your phonological awareness activity, and well, I'll give you an example here. Let's say let's say you're doing a letter activity, and it's a transition to going outside, and you hold up the letter J and you say, if your name starts with J, you can line up to go outside. And Joshua lines up to go outside, and Jeremy lines up to go outside, and Jacinda lines up to go outside. That's great, okay? Frankly, assuming that they are actually processing that themselves rather than following each other's leads, they don't need feedback from you because they've got it. Although you still can offer, oh yeah, Jacinda starts with a J. What really matters is when some other child whose name does not begin with J stands up to go outside. How we respond in that moment is the teaching moment in that situation, right? So let's say, I'm stuck. I was looking for another J name, and let's say Jacinda. Jacinta stands up, okay, and it's Jacinta with a G, and you go, oh, Jacinta, your name sounds a lot like so and so's. It has that just sound at the beginning, but let's look. Here's a picture of your name. Look at the first letter in your name. Remember what that letter is? And Jacinta goes, G. Oh, yeah, it's G. And look what letter I'm holding up. Does this look like a G? No, it doesn't. This is a J. The G for Jacinta and the J for Jonathan sound the same, but they're different. So that was a teaching moment, right? That was the child who's going to, so like somewhat counterintuitively, but absolutely the case. The biggest teaching moment in many of our activities is with the child who doesn't get it. And how we respond in that moment to the child who doesn't get it is like some of our most powerful moves of the day. All right. So, studies show that improved feedback makes the most difference for the kids who are sort of at the earliest stages in their learning. So let's talk a little bit about the quality of feedback in early childhood classrooms and really across the grades. And the data here is from this class tool I was referencing earlier. Okay. And just for those of you who aren't familiar, the class is a tool by which ratings can be made of classroom practices, interaction practices, one of which is ratings around feedback. And the observers sit in classrooms, they take notes, they score against criteria. 1 being the lowest score means it never happens. 7 being the highest score, meaning you're the queen of whatever it is, right? In many of the items that teachers are scored on, the average scores are in the 5s or even 6. Okay, we tend to be pretty good at a number of things in our classrooms. You can see the scores here from a National Head Start study. And before anybody wants to denigrate Head Start in any way, the data looks pretty similar in other kinds of early childhood classrooms, and it looks not that different in 4th grade or 7th grade. Educators tend to not be as strong on feedback as we are on some other things, which is unfortunate because remember, we just saw that it's sort of a superpower for us. So what I'd like to sort of have us be able to do by the end of our session here is be able to go, oh, we have some strategies for being able to be more effective at this. Let me just mention here, in case you sort of aren't making sense of the table, a couple things to note. So I say this is National Head Start data, so it's from Head Starts across the United States. It's from 2018, 19, and 20. They were doing annual national studies when everything got shut down for COVID. Obviously, they stopped going into classrooms and observing in the same kinds of ways. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been a year's data come out since, and that's why nothing's more recent than 20. But I think we can see there that the mean score is under 3 in a scale that's 1 to 7. There are things that we can do to strengthen our work. Okay, and I would also highlight that while that's the mean, the maximum is 3.88, right? Which is still not rocking and rolling if a scale is 1 to 7. So I want to think with you about 3 big ideas in feedback. Okay, the first is about opportunities, and we've sort of landed on that some already, but just to sort of frame it here, the first and most essential move with feedback is to notice when a child is having difficulties and to lean into that. Okay, that we see, oh, this child is struggling with their code, this child is having difficulty coming in from outside. And as I shared in another session, that when those moments happen, that our response is in effect, oh, goody, a learning opportunity. All right. And I know you're probably like, when the child's not coming in from outside, you're probably not going, oh, yay, somebody gets to learn something, right? But my point there is that of all the children coming inside in that moment, the one who stands the most opportunity to actually learn from the transition is going to be the one that's having a hard time. And so when we can notice that and think, okay, so this is what's going on. This is a learning moment for this child. So what am I going to do? All right. And the suggestion here is that there's a couple of things that we can do. All right. One is to the term that I've used here is bridge the gap. And that is that there's a distance between what the child is capable of and what we need the child to be capable of in order to be successful in this activity. So what can we do to support that child in being able to sort of move from their current level of competency to a higher level? And of course, the term for that in education is scaffolding, right? And then the other aspect of this, I've called it be Goldilocks, because the idea here is that we want to make enough of an intervention so that this child can be successful, but not so much so that we're doing all the work, right? Because if we do the more of the heavy lifting than we need to, then the child doesn't do as much learning as they perhaps could. And this is, this takes some real judgment on our part, because that's going to vary from child to child. It's kind of like, looking at the cookies in the oven and going, oh, are they brown enough to be like delicious, but not so brown as to be too crunchy? You've got to like make the right judgment about how much support you give. And that's going to depend on the activity. And it's really going to depend on the child, right? If you've got two kids coming in from outside and they don't want to come in, and one of them's just going, oh, I don't want to come in, teacher, you can just make a joke with that one. Oh, wouldn't we love to stay outside all day? And that one to go, yeah, okay, we can come on in. And then you've got the other one who's about prepared to melt down. And if you made a joke like that, you would lose them, right? And so you need to make the move that helps engage that child in a way that helps them calm and accept you as a partner in the process, right? So feedback opportunities, bridge the gap, be Goldilocks. That's where we're going. As far as the feedback opportunities go, I think the frame and then one sort of check on ourselves is really all we need to say. And the frame is that when children are having difficulties, when the learner, the scholar, the child, the kid, whatever, however we frame them, when they are having a moment where they can't accomplish something, that can be everything from where to hang up my coat, to how to open the milk carton, to what's our list here, to coming in from outside, to working out the math problem, to getting the phonological awareness, the rhyme, to handling the zipper, to whatever that might be, that whenever those moments are happening, that those are opportunities for us to engage in a back and forth with that child that will support them in developing the capacity to at least be better at it than they were 5 minutes ago, and eventually to gain proficiency with it. So those are opportunities. We need to notice them, which means we need to be slowed down enough to tell what's going on, right? And we need to be slowed down enough to successfully engage. So let's think about that, sort of how that shows up. So, here's just, I was in, a preschool classroom and wrote down some things that were moments for feedback. You've shared a whole bunch of others, but we mentioned the milk carton, we've mentioned the zipping, we've mentioned the math problem. Puzzles are a place where many children are puzzled, I guess we could say, right? Lots of phonological awareness activities are ones where kids get stuck. Drawing, we may call for a child to, strengthen that. We can in fact sort of challenge children with opportunities to do more than they were. Writing their name on all the places they write their name. There are many, many feedback opportunities. And what I want to highlight is that in addition to the noticing, the other thing that we have to do is sort of slow down and be present. Okay, here's a child who's having difficulty opening their milk carton. Can I slow down and walk with them through how we get a milk carton open? The reality is actually sometimes no, because there's 7 kids that need their milk cartons open. And if we don't, or somebody just spilled their milk, or all of the things that go on. So I want to acknowledge that sometimes the answer is no, we can't slow down. But when we are able to, that we engage with that child in a way that's supportive of that child. And I want to notice at least 3 other traps that it's easy to slip into. One is we can solve the problem for them. Here, let me open that for you. There, that gets the job done. They can drink their milk. Everybody's happy. They won't complain, right? We also sometimes can get frustrated, especially when it's the same child over and over, and especially when the child is not making effort, right? Or at least our perception is they're not making effort, right? And of course, when we get frustrated, do the children sense that? Absolutely, they sense that. And that's kind of the end of the process. And so us being able to go, whew, yeah, time number 14 with you with the milk, and I'm here to help, right? And that's sort of being able to have that kind of self-regulation ourselves is part of the challenge, all right? And also sometimes, we may only be half there in thinking about um, what a child's stuck with. And so, we're doing a phonological awareness activity, and we say, what rhymes with dog? Dog log or dog cat? And the child says cat. And then we say again, dog log or dog cat? And they say cat. And we say dog log or dog cat. They didn't get it the first time with that hint. We may need to change by the third time, change our hints, right? And maybe stretch it out. Dog, log, dog, cat, or whatever. Somehow engage our brain in shifting what we do, because repeating probably isn't going to get there. Now, I want to say that I'm sure I know there are times when I've simply repeated what I said before because I'm only half there, but we want to be fully there as much as we can, because I guess the fundamental thing here is, taking advantage of feedback opportunities by being fully present, not solving the problem for them, and regulating our own emotions as well. So let's look some at how that happens so that we can sort of get into these other two big ideas of bridging the gap and being Goldilocks. So here is an activity from a preschool classroom, and let me explain it to you, and then let's see what we might do with it. There's a series of 26 cards. No, actually, there's more than 26 cards because there's a beginning card. I think there's 27 cards. Anyway, doesn't matter. For each of the cards, what you can see is one card has the left half of the body of an animal, and the other card has the right half of the body of the animal and the animal's head. And then up in the top left corner, there is a letter, right? And except for the very first card, you can see there's a smiley face, right? And the letters correspond, of course, to the animals, right? So A is an alligator, B is a bear, so on and so forth, right? So what you need to do, well, actually, let me just pause here. Let me tell you, I'm going to tell you what the child did. And then I'm guessing you folks are smart enough to figure out a preschool card problem, and we'll be able to know what was supposed to happen, and we'll be able to think about what we might do. All right. So here's what the child did. The teacher put the first two together. The teacher said, here's what you do. You look for the tail of the animal and the head of the animal, and you put them together. And the teacher put that alligator together. Okay. And now the child has that next card, and you can see, I don't know if you can tell from your screen, but it's the card with the letter D, and it has the head of a dog and the back half of an elephant. And she is about to put that next to that card with the letter A and be happy with it. Leave it, and then go get another card. Okay? So you're the adult in the situation. No, here's the key thing, not that you're the adult. You are the skilled person here. What might you do to help this child be successful? And bonus points for why you think it might be effective. What might you do? Comments in the chat, or anyone wants to come off mute? Encourage the child to look at the size and or shapes that make the most sense to fit. So, let's see. Do those look like they're the same size? Do they look like they're the same shape? Okay. What else might we do? Susan, I don't know the answer on those cards, actually. I was in someone else's classroom. They are nice. Anyone have another strategy other than Laura's here, or some words to add to Laura's? Ask the child to identify the face of the animal and the body that may match. Okay, so this, what kind of animal does this look like the face of? Oh, a dog. I'm assuming with the card she's looking at, we'd hope she'd say a dog, right? Okay, oh yeah, I see that. It looks like a dog's ears, a dog's nose. Oh, so then, does that look like the back of a dog? Does that look like a match? So we're focusing on helping the child see the matches of the shapes of the animals. Okay, anything else? I want to just highlight that there is actually, and you folks have probably seen this, not commented on it, so I'll make it visible for us. There is actually an entirely separate queuing system other than student, Laura says the student can then look at the letters afterwards to check their work. Or Janet says, what letter comes next? So there are two queuing systems in this, aren't there? And the first decision that we have to make when we're thinking about how to scaffold this child is, which of these queuing systems are we going to have them focus on first? The animals or the letters? And the answer is probably going to depend in part on what we know about this child, right? If this is a student who is skilled with letters, and we want to encourage them to use letters, we'd say, oh, look, there's the letter A. What letter do you think would be next? Oh, letter B. Let's put it there and see if it works. Oh, look at that. It matched up for the bear, right? Okay. So we could cue on the letters depending on the child, right? Tammy says you could let her know that it's like a puzzle. When you place them together, do they fit and are they aligned, right? Because when she puts that dog next to the bear, the people who made this are very clever. The dog and the bear, not only are they different sizes, they don't line up on the cards, do they? It's like a puzzle. When you place them together, do they fit? So we could look at that dog and that bear and we could see, oh, do those two seem to fit? So what you folks have done here is, I want to just sort of unpack some of what you've done here, all right? And what I especially want to highlight is that what you did was you thought about two things simultaneously. One is, how do you put this together properly, right? You have to know how to do it. You can't scaffold it if you don't know how to do it, all right? And you're thinking about that. Oh, we actually came up with three different queuing systems here. There's the letter sequence, there's the animals, like that's the front half of a dog, that's the back half of a dog. And then the third one was, do they align when we put them together, right? So you folks have figured out how to do it. And then you've come up with words that support the child in noticing what you're thinking in your head, right? Oh, what if you look at the letters? When you place them together, they fit. Let's see, do those ones fit together, right? So let's look at the face of the animal and the tail. Do those two look like they belong together? So you have come up with strategies that will that both work and then that inform the child in ways that will help the child figure out what works, okay? And that's bridging the gap, okay? The child right now is they're not paying attention to any of those queuing systems. The only queuing system they were paying attention to was, do the cards line up next to each other, okay? They weren't, and you're referencing what helps them understand that, and explaining it to them in a way that they can use it. All right, and I refer to that as bridging the gap. Okay, and that can happen in a number of different ways. First off, you're bridging their thinking with scaffolding. Okay, and we're going to have more to say about scaffolding. We're going to let these ones go for now. And you were bridging their persistence as well. If we're going, oh, look, you kept trying and you got one. Or even if you tried and you didn't get it, but then you got another one and you tried again, and then you got another one and you tried again. So we can, in effect, bridge the gap both in their thinking or in their emotions as well, okay, and in their effort. So when we think of scaffolding, what we've got is a couple different kinds of strategies, okay? One is hints. And when you say it's like a puzzle, when you place them together, they should fit. That's a hint, right? Look to see if they fit. Or you could say the front and the back half of the animal should go together. That's a hint, right? Oh, I see a letter A here. What letter comes next? That's a hint, right? So you're simply giving hints is a way to sort of nudge a child toward thinking and using strategies that they weren't using 10 seconds before. All right. Another way to get at this is to give assistance. And I don't know that we came up with it in that example, but let me walk you through a moment of assistance. If you remember back in the video with the teacher and the child with the purse, she gave assistance by one was she held that purse for him, right? So that he only had to manipulate the zipper. If he'd had to hold on to that purse and pull that zipper, he never would have been able. She, in effect, simplified the problem. In the example with the cards, we didn't talk about this, but the teacher, in effect, provided assistance here by, you'll notice there are only the cards that go up to G here. The teacher removed about 20 of the cards. That's, in effect, a form of assistance. Made this task easier by removing many distractions. Okay, give them 26 cards, that's overwhelming. Not for you and me, but for a 4 or 5-year-old, absolutely, right? So hints and assistance. And let me just use the example that's here in the text and in the photo. So this was an observation at cleanup time. It was a breakfast, and kids are supposed to carry their stuff over to where they put the relevant garbage in the garbage, and they put the things that aren't garbage in the bin. And you know what happens with that, right? Any number of things happen with that. One is that kids throw the silverware away. I'm sure you've seen that, right? Children throw the trays away. Children spill the milk on the way. There are so many ways for carrying a tray over and sorting everything out to go wrong, right? So, one of the things that this teacher did was she reminded them as they walked over um, to their little station, she reminded them about what you do with the milk, okay? Because what she wanted them to do is to pour milk in the bin and not just throw the whole milk container into the trash. So she said as they walked over, remember, first we pour our milk in the bin, then the carton goes in the trash. And she even made a little chant out of it. Milk in the bin, carton in the trash. That's scaffolding. That's a hint, right? That helps me remember what to do. Now, she's not doing it for them. They're still walking over there and pouring the milk in the bin and putting the carton in the trash, but she's given them a cue. I also saw her offer assistance to one child, and I'm assuming she made this decision strategically, right? I can carry your cup while you carry your plate, okay? She probably had a bit of self-interest in that because you know what happens if kids have a cup on top of their plate is somebody's cleaning up milk, right? And so she said, I'll carry your cup while you carry your plate. So she made the task easier. Hints and assistance, just all over the place with scaffolding. Okay. Puzzles. There's lots of hints we can give with puzzles, right? Here's, take a moment to read some of those, right? I notice this piece has a face. Where does the face go? Or that's one way to solve a puzzle, right? Is to look at the picture and figure out where the right, what seems to go together. Oh, here's a body, here's a head, maybe those go together, right? Or to work on the edges, right? Straight part has an edge. Or to use the box lid, that's another strategy. And another strategy we already dealt with the cylinders was sometimes if you rotate the piece. And or one thing I saw one teacher do one time was she just nudged a piece up into a child's field of view because it was the right piece so that she got him to consider that one, right? There's lots of ways to give kids hints about puzzles. And what we end up doing is trying to choose the one that's most appropriate in that moment for that child. Okay, so let's see. What do we want to say about this? Oh, okay. So effective scaffolding, okay? What I want to suggest to you is that there's like 3 elements to what we've been talking about, all right? And I think I've started to unpack that some, but let's be explicit. One is that we ourselves have to be able to break the task down. We have to be able to go, oh, here's how you do it. We have to know how to be successful. If I'm going to support somebody else being successful, I have to know. Then the next sort of skill we're practicing is, this is an odd term, we might not have heard this before, cognitive empathy. You know what empathy is, right? Empathy is sort of understanding someone else's emotions. Cognitive empathy is, in effect, trying to understand someone else's thinking. How is this person thinking? Because if I can get a sense of what they're thinking, then I can offer a next move that fits for them. All right. So just to go back here, for example, with those cards with the animals, if the child was paying attention to the animal shapes, and I noticed that, I go, oh, I see they're using the animal shapes as their cues. I'm going to focus on that. Okay. As opposed to if they seem to be using the letters, I go, oh, I'm seeing they're using the letters. I'm going to focus on that. But in any case, the idea here is that I try to understand, why did they do what they did, and what would be a move that I could make then? That's the third, bridging the gap. I understand how to do the problem. I understand what they're trying to do to solve the problem. And here's what I can do to get them from where they are to what they need to be able to do in order to make it work. Let's do one. So this is from a classroom. Teacher was reading a book about food, and there was a picture. It wasn't exactly this picture because I didn't have that book, but one where looked much like this. And the teacher asked, what's the child eating? And one kid said, a donut, and everybody else agreed. So let me just check. Is everybody here clear that that's not a donut? Okay. How do we know that? For the break it down step, what happens is you can see how the problem is solved. Okay. Is this a donut or is this a bagel? You know how, you know how to solve that problem. All right. So how do you tell bagels and donuts apart? Some comments? You all were very comfortable saying that was a bagel. Past experiences. Okay, so Sarah, what from your past experiences? What do you see or hear or smell or taste? Oh, Amber says frosting or sprinkles. Okay, donuts have frosting. I've never seen a bagel with frosting, right? Donuts may have sprinkles. Bagels don't get sprinkles, although they do get something on top, don't they? Look what's on that bagel. Yep. Donuts have frosting. Donuts tend to have color. All right. And seeded. Yes. Okay. We've got sesame seeds. I think, is that what that is? Sesame seeds on the bagel, right? Okay. And Susan says, looks like bread, how they're cooked. So bagels and donuts are cooked differently. And the trick is, of course, that's absolutely true. Bagels and donuts are cooked differently. When we look at a bagel or a donut, what can we see or smell or whatever, when we've got that bagel or donut that informs us about that cooking process, okay? Allie highlights that donuts are sometimes glazed. Donuts feel softer. Oh, if we had one in front of us, okay, it's a bagel. So Tammy, so if we had one in front of us, we could feel it, and then Tammy says it's not sweet. We could taste it. They don't taste the same. Their squishiness is different. All right, so if we're just looking at a photo, what we've got is you can tell donuts and bagels apart by what's on top of them and by their color. I think that's what we got, right? Okay. Now, so if we had them physically in front of us, we could smell them and we could taste them. Okay. So, like, after we deal with the book, tomorrow we're bringing in donuts and bagels, right? But for today, we're going to have to just look at the pictures. So now, just to be clear, we broke it down. We thought about how do you tell, like, kids can't, they're not telling bagels and donuts apart. How do we tell it apart? Now, I want to just notice that you and I, when we pick up a bagel or a donut, has anybody here recently spent 30 seconds trying to figure out whether it was a bagel or a donut? No, you know automatically, right? So what we just did was we just slowed down enough to do a level of analysis that you would never do in your daily life. But if you're going to explain the difference to a child, you've got to think about, how did I know that? How did I know that? So we broke it down. Now, cognitive empathy. This is the idea of, like, let's be clear. The kids did not, when the teacher said, what is the child eating? The kids did not say pizza. They did not say chicken. They did not say, having a beer, right? They said donut. Why did they say donut? It's pretty obvious, right? But let's just name it. Why did they say donut? They were being smart. They were using the information they had. Because it's the same shape. It's round and it has a hole. So, like, our cognitive empathy here is, oh, you noticed that this is round and it has a hole, didn't you? Wow, you really look closely at things. So now we're in a position to scaffold, aren't we? Okay. Because we have figured out how to solve the problem, and we figured out, like, what the kids are thinking. Oh, it's round and it has a hole? Absolutely. Now what we've got to do is figure out, how do we help children that are noticing that it's round and it has a hole be able to distinguish bagels and donuts? Well, there's a lot of possible strategies, right? But what we could do would be to say something like, yes, I see, it's round and it has a hole. Donuts are round and they have holes too, don't they? Oh, have you ever noticed what's on top of donuts? What are some of the things that are on top of donuts sometimes? Oh, yeah, sprinkles are on donuts sometimes, aren't they? What are some of the colors of sprinkles? Oh, red and orange and yellow and green. Yeah, yeah, lots of different colors. When I look at this right here, I see something else on that donut. I don't think those are sprinkles. I think those are something called sesame seeds. That's interesting. What else might be on top of a donut? Oh, icing, frosting. Do we see any frosting on this donut? No. So we're seeing sesame seeds and no frosting? Have you ever heard of something called a bagel? Oh, thank you, Amelia. You've heard of bagels? Tell us about bagels. Oh, you eat them for breakfast? Maybe we should go get some pictures of donuts and bagels and see which one this looks more like, a donut or a bagel. right? So what I just tried to do was start from what they knew. They're absolutely dead right. This thing is round and has a hole in the middle, and help walk them through the process of noticing where this is discrepant with what they think is going on. All right. So bridging the gap. Let's take a peek at a video of a teacher doing some bridging the gap. And oh my goodness, it's 9 after. So yes, let's let's notice what this educator does to bridge the gap. And oh, let me just back this up here. This is child's done. Well, you'll see what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out how to write some words. All right. And I think, and the teacher supports the child in being successful.
Do you know him? What about here? What do you see here? On the table, what do you see on the table? Do you know what this is? Pineapple. Oh, pineapple. Should I write pineapple? How can we write pineapple?
I don't know.
What letter is that? P. Pineapple. And then that's a silent. Pineapple. What did you see?
Okay, hints and assistance to bridge that gap. So this teacher knows that this particular student actually knows a lot of letter sound correspondences, and so he isolates those sounds of those letters, as Susan points out. But notice not all of them. They just did P. They did P and A and P and O. They stuck with 4 of them. So he also provided the assistance of doing the writing himself, because for many children, being able to do both the writing and the sounding out is a bridge too far. So an example of scaffolding. And so, and bridging the gap between what the child can't do and what they're capable of in order to complete the task. So part of the challenge here is making the just right move. The idea here that I'm going to give a child enough information and support that they're successful, but not so much that that they don't have to do make a lift themselves. All right. So the 2 extremes here are to give them no help. To say, like, here's the word, here's a pineapple, here's a pencil. It's your job to write the word pineapple. Okay, throw them in the deep end and hope they can swim. Right. That's not how we do swim lessons, right? Or on the other hand, do it for them. Oh, here's the word pineapple. I'll just write pineapple for you, right? At which point you get to be a college student drinking wine in the kiddie pool because you never learned how to swim, right? So what we need to do is provide the scaffolding sort of in between of making giving that child the amount of support they need for that particular maneuver. This is what swim lessons are all about, right? Is we're taking kids through a series of skills, and we are giving them the amount of support they need at that particular moment. Maybe they need to be supported back behind while they use the board, or maybe they just need to be able to swim towards someone, or yeah. So offering the right amount of support. I would suggest to you that oftentimes the biggest challenge is us being able to figure out exactly where the child is and to meet them there. And my suggestion there would be that we really slow down and try to notice where they're at, and be responsive to sort of what they know and they don't know. And when we're in a hurry, that's harder to do. But like taking that moment to think about, oh, they said bagel. Why would they have said bagel? Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, they said donut. Well, of course, they're round and they have holes. And so let's see, what can I do to help them make that connection? And we're encouraging a whole different level of analysis on the child's part when we say, oh yeah, it's round and it has holes. Let's look at what's on top and think about the color and so on, as opposed to simply saying, no, that's a bagel and we eat bagels for breakfast, right? We're encouraging a level of thinking and attention on the child's part. So when we can slow down to notice their thinking, then and respond to that, then that's just a really powerful learning stance for those kids. There's this lovely quote I think, in Powerful Interactions. During a powerful interaction, you have a window into the child's experience and thinking, because in this moment, your attention's focused on the child, her actions and or her language. So if we can slow down to really be present with that child, then that makes all the difference. I'm looking at our time and realizing that we're a little short, or I'm a little, I've been a little verbose, I guess, but let me highlight a couple things in our last bit here. One is we earlier on, we talked some about encouragement and effort, and we haven't much since, and we need to, because it's a really important part of the process of providing feedback. That part of the feedback is about the cognitive or emotional or motor skill, but there's always an emotional component. So let me just invite you to take a moment to think about something you're not good at, maybe even something you feel incompetent at. I'm kind of a disaster in woodworking, which is why I chose this picture. You think about what you're not so good at. And then I want you to think for a moment, or actually call to mind your thoughts and feelings about what happens when you have to do that task, okay? What's that like, to have to do the thing that's hard for you? I know whenever I take on a wood project around the house, yeah, dread, anxiety. It's like, oh, I'm going to screw this up. I think, so household projects I am not good at. We had tiles come loose in the bathroom. Okay. Oh, parallel parking. Right. Okay. And it's like, oh, geez, if I repair these tiles, everybody that comes in our bathroom is going to know I repaired these tiles. They're just going to be able to look at them and know I did it. Okay. And so the nice thing about being an adult with a little bit of disposable income is you can hire somebody to do the work, right? Children can't hire somebody to write their name on their painting. Okay. So children encounter things that they're not good at all the time. And I want to notice, like, our feelings for parallel parking, some students have that same experience when it's time to put their name on a paper. All right. So, like I say, they don't have disposable income to hire somebody to do it. So yeah, there's anxiety and intense procrastination, right? So, and, Susan, yes, there are kids that will solve the problem for them, right? But we don't want them to. This is the future of the kids that have somebody else solve, like, write their name on them. Is they're going to be adults who are unable to put their name on their paper, and so they're going to be unable to sign for their driver's license, right? So children feel unskilled at things, and we want them to learn to be persistent at those things and to gain the confidence to take them on. And what the research says is that it's not only the particular task involved, it's also, like, children oftentimes end up with sort of mental structures for how they think about things when they're having difficulties. And some children believe, they seem to, like, you'll run into these. I'm sure you have these kids in your classroom where when they are having difficulty with something, they're optimistic that they're going to be able to solve it. Or if they can't, that the adult is going to help them. All right. Other kids are optimistic that it'll get solved because, oh, somebody will fix it for me. Right. And then there are kids who believe that they can't do it and that no one is going to help them. And if they take the task on, they will, I chose this phrase very specifically. They will experience the pain of failing alone. Okay, I want to note those two things. They will experience the pain of failing, not just failing, but of failing alone, of being a child and like knowing in their soul that part of being a child is you need to rely on people for help, but they've had too many experiences of not getting helped, and they assume you won't either. Okay. And so part of what we're doing when we are supporting children in providing feedback for kids in difficult moments is we are supporting them in learning not only to have confidence in themselves, but that when they have difficulties, adults will support them in being successful. Okay. Tammy, it is so sad to hear little ones say, I can't do it, right? And so what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to listen to that and not just say, yes, you can, but to offer enough support so that in fact they can. And I want to show you an example of that, okay? In the classic, one of the places this shows up, and I've already mentioned it, is in name writing, right? Kids are, they're supposed to write their name on things. They want to write their name on things, but we will see children who either say they can't or they give up. And I want to show you. Here's a little transcript from an interaction between a child and a teacher. All right, and the teacher says, "Liza, would you put your name on your paper?" And Liza says, "I can't." And the teacher says, "It's a big job, but I can help. Let's do the first letter. You know what letter your name starts with." And she does know that. Liza says, "L." Yep, you know about L. Watch how I make your L. I'll start at the top and make a long line down. Then I make a line across the bottom. Here, you can start at this dot and make a long line down. The child made a vertical line. There you go. Now, just a line across. And the child made a horizontal line. You worked on it and made an L. Do you want to make some more letters in your name, or is L enough for today? Okay. Notice what she did there. Okay. First off, just in terms of cognition and motor skills, she scaffolded, right? She provided hints and assistance. Okay. The hint of, that it's a long line down, it's a line across. She put a dot there. That was some assistance. She simplified the task by just this letter if you want. But what did she do for that child emotionally in terms of effort? What do you notice she did that encouraged that child to engage and persist? What stands out there? She built her up. What did she tell? Yeah, Susan says, I can help you. Okay, you're not alone. I can help you. Okay, we can do it together. Yeah, I can. We're doing this together, aren't we? Yeah. Okay, so that sense of partnership is really important. And she encouraged what she could do. She found, okay, so let's back up there. She acknowledged her feelings. It is a big job, right? Okay, but I can help. And then she encouraged what she could do. She, like this break it down piece. Oh, I know Liza. Liza knows the first letter of her name. So if I ask her, what letter does your name start with? She'll say L and she'll feel successful, right? So I'm going to ask her, what letter does your name start with? Liza says L. Liza's first move, the teacher set it up so that Liza's first move was successful. The letter L. You got it. Okay. So now we'll stretch it a little bit. We'll go into the motor skills. And then at every place where the child engaged, like the child made a vertical line, there you go. Okay. In effect, that's a high five, right? Okay. Now just a line across. You've only got a little bit left. You can do it, right? So all this encouragement. And then look at that beautiful statement. You worked on it and made an L. You worked on it. Okay. She didn't say persisted, but she did say persisted, right? And made an L. And then she didn't push it. The child was feeling successful. Does the child want to go on to another letter or not? It's the child's call, because quit when you're successful. Don't keep pushing until they reach their frustration point, at least not when they're first hesitating, right? Okay, it is 5:24. So we got to offering encouragement. That's just what we've been about. The research on noticing efforts instead of smarts is all over the place, right? Never say, well, I shouldn't say never say. There's never nevers, but focus on children's efforts and not on their smarts, right? You did it because you worked on it, not because you're smart, right? You did it because you persisted. You tried, all right? Us being present is essential to this. I think we've sort of landed on that. Um, Let me just actually bring us to a point where you can decide what you want to hold on to and use. The first thing I want to suggest here is, as I mentioned earlier, this tends to be something that pretty much all of us could develop more proficiency with. And so, I would encourage inside programs that this is something that we can do with each other. I know I've worked with programs where we've kind of done case studies, and I'll tell you, some of the daily routines are really powerful places for us to practice feedback. Zipping coats, milk cartons, some of those kinds of name writing, some of those kinds of things. I think using that, if you found that sort of take apart of breaking it down, seeing from the child's perspective and bridging the gap being useful for you, I would encourage you to make use of that yourself and within your programs. I want to just highlight that having been somebody that's observed in classrooms a lot, there are these two places, like these places that we fall, that like trip us up, that I want to just encourage us to notice, because they can be like parts of our scripts and they don't work. Okay. At least I haven't seen them work. The one is to keep repeating the prompt. Like if it hasn't worked the second time, it's not going to work the third time. So think about adjusting. Okay. And the other is, I totally appreciate the intent behind you can do it, you can do it. But when kids are going, no, I can't, they don't need you to tell them they can do it. They need you to hold their hand and walk with them while you support them in doing it. They need you to think that they're a partner, and they need you to give them some kind of way in where they can believe they can be successful. All right. Encouragement is great, but when they feel stuck, they need to see a path in, not just be told they can do it. All right. So, really essential there. Just a reminder about these 3 steps, that like what we've been focused on has been how we extend learning, but us being fully present, the child feeling like we have a connection, are really powerful moves for us to be able to extend their learning. This is, for those of you that have been along for the ride on the powerful interactions, this is the final of the extend learning strategies. You sort of have a whole repertoire you can use if you find that useful. There's a lot of words here, but I just want to highlight the ideas that when kids are confused, when they're unsuccessful, that's where the opportunity is. Stay tuned in as you engage in that opportunity. Think about, how can I support them from getting where they are to where they might be. One school I was in had this quote from Vygotsky on the wall that I pretty much love, that I want to just share, because what this is about is like bringing kids into a life of thinking and effort. Children are apprenticed into the intellectual life of those around them. You're really apprenticing kids on their thinking, which is a pretty beautiful thing. There's those the sort of 3 elements of scaffolding. That's useful for you to have. Here we are at the end with it. And let me just give you a couple minutes here to name what you might want to use from this work. If I think in many workshops, I often say the most important part of the workshop is what happens with you using it tomorrow. So if there's something you want to remember and use, write yourself a little note, put it in your lesson plan, whatever. If anybody has anything that they'd like to share in the chat about where they might go with this, then that is always helpful to see, and because we can encourage each other that way. I want to just offer my gratitude for some of you. We've been together for a number of sessions. For others, this first one, my gratitude for your work with children, for your engagement here together. We have a pretty amazing opportunity and responsibility with being adults in young people's lives, and I'm glad that we get to think about that together, about how to do that with skill and integrity. So thank you. And let's see, Karen, there's